Okay.
Okay, now we are beginning our live stream of Aini Living Conversations. This is what the 144th conversation, our 144. We finally hit that number.
That's a potent number right there.
That's a potent number, and we have a potent conversation for you today. A very special topic. The mother of the inner fire of that's within us and that drives everything. It's the life force of desire.
Right.
So it's pretty simple to understand just as a concept. Just the title might gives us a big clue on what we're talking about, but to think that we can go for an hour with details about this is amazing. So you want to stick around for this. I have a Blue Heron woman here with me, and Julian Katari. We have this conversation every week for those who are joining for the first time, who haven't seen us a lot. Every week we get together. We are part of Aloha Aini Dao Living, where we strive to, we do the work of studying, and putting together everything that is necessary to create a humanity and freedom and plenitude, which involves a whole lot of things. And
we're building an empire. We're building an empire like the Incas did, where they guaranteed all their citizens ample food, water, and shelter equally.
And healthy food, healthy water.
Yes, and we're calling on the spirit of the Incas to teach us how to develop 3,000 varieties of papas and maize, and like they did before the conquistadors came and crushed all that.
Yeah. So that's what we do. And to get acquainted with all this information, you can check it out in all of our 143 other videos and
conversations. Yeah.
All the different topics, all the different sovereignty pillars, all the different things that must be considered if you want to really be free, because you can't, freedom is all or nothing. You cannot just be partially free. You cannot just accommodate your spiritual practice to your capitalist consumerist livelihood. Right. We have to change everything, and we're conscious about all the problems in the world, and we are solving all the problems in the world with this by building the new.
Exactly.
From the old and coming into the new. So there's a lot of things to share about this, and this is one of those important topics that we need to discuss and deep thoroughly into. So this is going to help people understand that. So let's dive into the desire, intent, willpower. Does it have to do something with? You said something about it's not really
desire.
intent.
It's not willpower. It's desire. Desire fuels willpower.
Okay.
It's desire. It's pure desire. Intent is the New Age way of dumbing down desire.
Okay.
Making it scientific.
Right.
Which isn't. So there is no prayer like desire.
Mm-hmm.
A man sits in the center of a Middle Eastern marketplace, crying his eyes out. A platter of pepper spilled on the ground before him. Steadily and methodically, he reaches for pepper after pepper, popping them into his mouth and chewing deliberately, while at the same time wailing uncontrollably. "What's wrong, Nasruddin?" his friends ask as they gather around the extraordinary sight. "What's the matter with you?" Tears stream down Nasruddin's face as he sputters and answers. "I'm looking for the sweet one," he gasps. It's one of Nasruddin's most endearing qualities that he speaks out of both sides of his mouth. Because like desire itself, stories about Nasruddin always have two aspects. He's a fool and he's a wise man at the same time. There's an obvious meaning to his actions containing one kind of teaching and a hidden meaning containing another. So the first meaning jumps out of the story right away. It's the basic message of both Buddhism and Freudian theory, because, and this is it, that's desire never learns. Even when eliciting suffering, it perseveres. So Nasruddin models our lives for us. Struggling against the tide of disappointment, we continue to search for the sweet one. What he is also telling us is that desire will not leave us alone. It pushes us to find and make use of our creativity, propelling us toward an elusive but compelling goal. Nasruddin makes no apologies for his desire, nor does he fight his tears in an effort to make them go away. Both his sadness and his longing are left undisturbed. And he knows that despite his tears, there is a pleasure that comes in the looking, the searching. We're all very familiar with Buddha having supposedly said that all life is suffering, and suffering is desire is the cause of suffering.
Mm-hmm.
But the word Buddha actually used for suffering was dukkha.
Okay.
And dukkha has the more subtle meaning of pervasive unsatisfactoriness.
Okay.
And that pervasive unsatisfactoriness was what had me standing at the best job of my life as an RN and saying, I can't do this anymore.
Mm-hmm. So it's like almost satisfied, but not completely.
Right. Pervasive, and it wasn't suffering. It was just, I'm done, right? A pervasive unsatisfactoriness. This is no longer satisfying.
Mm-hmm.
But this seems more to the point, because if we're honest with ourselves, we know that even the most pleasurable experiences are tinged with a sense of discontent because of how transient the pleasure is.
Mm-hmm.
So, because of the mistranslation of this first noble truth, a state of having no preferences rose up in the West, and that was the demonization of desire.
Oh.
Upending the usual way of approaching desire in our culture, which is to either indulge it mindlessly or guiltily, this culture of having no preferences has degenerated into people that are unable to make decisions, a people of apathy. And most of you would say, well, that's not right. I make decisions all the time. No, how apathetic are you?
Mm-hmm.
How the true decisions, right? Yes, you make a decision whether to drink beer or whiskey or Coke or Pepsi or
Mm-hmm.
go to the gym, but that's not a decision that gets you out of apathy.
Mm-hmm.
So because for want of desire, life's vitality will begin to evaporate. So for want of desire, if we don't acknowledge desire, our vitality begins to evaporate. And it's not possible to eliminate desire by pretending it's not there. As the French say, chase away the natural and it comes back at a gallop. In trying to eliminate desire, we are throwing the baby out with the bathwater. To be with people trying to eliminate their desires is to be with people on edge, not at peace with themselves. And there's a closed, anxious, or fearful quality underlying the way they express themselves. Yet when people become more honest about their desires, a different feeling emerges, and they are present, alive, open, and tender. Mm-hmm. The tantric, or left-handed path in the East, views desire as a vehicle for personal transformation. The pathwalkers embrace desire as a valuable and precious resource. They learn how to use and work with desire rather than letting desire control and use them. Because if we don't acknowledge it, it will use and control us. A contemporary Indian teacher once commented, the problem is not desire, it's that your desires are too small.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same thing Marianne Williamson said. It's not that you're afraid of your darkness, it's you're afraid of your light.
Okay.
How much light, right? Your desires are too small. So this left-handed tantric path means opening to the desire so that it becomes more than craving for whatever our culture has conditioned us to want.
Mm-hmm.
Desire is a teacher, and when we immerse ourselves in it without guilt, shame, or clinging, it helps us embrace life fully. Desire is actually a natural response to the reality of suffering. We feel incomplete and desire completeness. So we feel dis-ease and we want ease. We feel insecurity and we desire comfort. We feel alone and we desire connection. So our experience of life is shaped by dukkha, the pervasive unsatisfactoriness, and our response is desire, because desire is the crucible within which the self is formed. Desire is our vitality. It's that which gives us our individuality and keeps prodding us out of ourselves. In the Sufi tradition, the Nasruddin story, human yearning is understood to be a reflection of God's desire to be known. Only by dwelling in the insatiable and infinite quality of desire can the Sufi begin to appreciate God's nature. So the infinite can be known through an acceptance of and opening to the unending quality of yearning, desire.
Mm-hmm. The actual word that Buddha used to describe the cause of dukkha, the pervasive unsatisfactoriness, was not desire, it was tanha, which means thirst or craving. So again, Okay.
he was mistranslated. So this tanha, or thirst or craving, connotes what we might also call clinging, the attempt to hold on to an ungraspable experience, not the
Mhm.
desire for happiness or completion.
Hmm.
So to set up desire as the enemy and then try to eliminate it is to seek to destroy one of our most precious human qualities, our natural response to the truth of suffering. And it is actually very easy to set up desire as an enemy and isolate it from everything else that we value.
Mm-hmm.
When we split it off like that or demonize it, it can still be enjoyed guiltily. And so then it never gets integrated with loftier impulses. And the prime example of that is my relationship with a man who of Southern Baptist persuasion, right? He's tried to deny his sexual desire for me. So when he didn't, he enjoyed it guiltily,
Mm-hmm.
but he would never associate it with loftier impulses.
Mm-hmm.
He could never see it as sacred
Right.
because he was indulging in it guiltily.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, it brings on the notion of superiority, which then prompted him to say, I don't want to marry you. I'm better than you.
Yeah.
Right? It's so crazy how it works.
Mm-hmm.
Freud suggested that there might be something vaguely disgusting about desire, something that might have its origins in a repugnance that many feel toward the genitals, which is a possibility, right?
Mm-hmm.
He said that all neurotics and many others take exception to the fact that we are born between urine and feces. Think about
Okay.
it.
Yeah.
We're born between urine and feces.
We are excretions.
So Christianity didn't kill Eros, it just made it vicious.
Okay.
In the left-handed tantric path, you find encouragement to appreciate the important link between the spiritual and the sensual. The Tibetan Buddhist model for an awakened mind is orgasm, because it is only at the climax of lovemaking that the veils of ignorance can drop away.
Mm-hmm.
The notion of detachment, which is fundamental to an Eastern approach to life, has become problematic given the need that most people feel for intimacy. We equate it with what the Buddha did, leaving his wife and child to pursue his spiritual search.
Mm-hmm.
At a Buddhist conference, someone asked the Buddhist writer holding it about non-attachment. The questioner said, I have no trouble understanding the idea of non-attachment in meditation, but when it comes to my marriage and family, I don't get it. Why is non-attachment even a positive thing to aspire to? He was thinking it non-attachment meant he needed to leave his wife and kid, right?
Mm-hmm.
The writer that was hosting the conference motioned to his wife, who was just coming in the door, and said, my wife says it's like holding a coin. As he held out one hand, held out one arm, palm up, hand closed. We can hold it like this, he said, emphasizing his closed fist, or we can hold it like this,
Mm-hmm.
with the coin still sitting in the center of his palm. The closed fist is like clinging, yet with my open hand, I'm still holding the coin. So desire can be held lightly. The difference between the closed fist and open hand is the difference between clinging or craving and desire or non-attachment.
Mm-hmm.
The Buddha actually very much tried to eliminate desire in himself, almost killing himself. So in taking his penances to the extreme, he realized that the world would not tolerate his elimination of eros. The world would then eliminate him instead if he tried to continue to eliminate his eros, his desire.
Okay.
So he concluded that there had to be another way, and that is where his famous middle way came from. This middle way is a tricky place to dwell because it's a between space
Mm-hmm.
that is shown with the holding of a coin in the open palm. It's a space where desire is not pushed away. It's a space where we open to desire. In this space, one does not reject pleasure, but yet one is not dependent on pleasure.
Mm-hmm.
Desire has room to breathe while the desirer is urged to examine desire's qualities. So the Buddha's middle path did not focus on desire as an enemy to be conquered, but rather as an energy to be perceived correctly. He was interested in teaching us not only to find our own freedom, but to do so while staying in affectionate relationship with other people.
Mm-hmm.
He told his followers to be lights unto themselves, but also told them how much we need each other to make true freedom possible. The sexual, the interpersonal, and the spiritual all exist on one continuum and are all part and parcel of each other. So as we open to desire, things do not become less sexual. They actually become more erotic.
Mm-hmm.
Desire seeks wholeness and desire seeks bliss. The grandest and most vivid story in all of Indian mythology can be found in the Hindu epic called Ramayana. It's 25,000 verses long, and it's a story about the movement from clinging to pure desire. The Ramayana describes in mythic form the journey that is possible from clinging to non-clinging when desire is acknowledged as a path in its own right. So its main characters, the lovers Sita and Rama, and it's interesting, I had a goat named Sitara once.
Mm-hmm.
Are buffeted back and forth between union and separation throughout the tale, aided in their attempts to reunite by a monkey named Hanuman. So while the love that connects Sita and Rama is never in doubt through the long separation, it is their desire for one another that kept them seeking reunion. One way of reading the Ramayana is as a teaching in how to use desire in the service of love. How to use the inevitable expanse that one finds between lover and beloved as a vehicle for greater wisdom and compassion. And this gap between the lover and beloved, and it might be between actual human lover and beloved, or actual or human and the thing they're desiring, that they're beloving, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily, the beloved is not necessarily a human. But this gap is the space where the most critical emotional and spiritual work takes place. Some people limit this story by saying that the ego has many desires, while the only desire the soul has is to merge with God. However, the strict division between soul and ego and what they want is very rigid and limiting. And it splits apart the self into lower and higher. And this is one of the things the Ramayana story addresses. While it is inevitable for some degree of desire to go astray, the denigration of desire can itself become one of the ways that wisdom is thwarted. To see desire as limited to the realm of ego and therefore always potentially dangerous is to miss its true nature. The power of desire can be harnessed for growth of all sorts, and that's the message of the Ramayana. Like Sita and Rama, we all have to learn how to navigate the waters of our most intimate relationships, face the loneliness and separateness that come with love, and confront the demons that keep us from knowing the divinity of our desire.
Mm-hmm.
So when I decided at the age of 6, responding to a call in by Holy Mother and said I was going to be a nurse,
Mm-hmm.
Every time my dad would tousle my head and say, only if God wills, he was doing his best to keep me from knowing the divinity of my desire.
Okay.
The tale brings in another character named Ravana, who desires Sita so much that he continually tries to possess her completely.
Mhm.
And that is us. Ravana is us, trying to possess the objects of our affection, trying to merge with an objectified and idealized beloved. In the Ramayana, Sita and Rama's physical separation is a metaphor for the separation of subject and object, or lover and beloved. Sita's rescue depends on a third force that can bridge the distance between them, and this force is embodied by the monkey Hanuman, who is the son of wind. This liminal character is the key to the resolution of desire's most persistent dilemmas. For in a certain way, desire does not quite know what to do with itself. It seeks union, it seeks complete satisfaction.
Mhm.
And the achievement of it is only a minute second, because as soon as one desire is fulfilled, you're pushed on to another.
Mhm.
What we need to learn here is that it's all about the journey. In the liminal space, the gap is the journey.
Mhm.
And once we achieve union with our beloved, then we want to unpack and stay there forever. But that's not how desire works. We can stay there, but desire is always pushing us to seek a new liminal journey, another gap space leading us to another beloved or a different form of the beloved.
Mhm.
So desire's ultimate goal is to free us from clinging. Desire has a vision that's paradoxical, a vision that can both confuse and enlighten us. In its paradoxical nature, in its ability to simultaneously breach and maintain the space between lovers, in the way it both connects and separates, and in the manner in which it forces us to reconcile love and hate, is often as close as we can come to liberation in our regular lives.
Mm.
Desire summons, ties, binds, and maddens us, even as it ushers us toward innermost bliss. It is desire, after all, that makes us seek liberation in the first place, makes us seek freedom.
Mhm. Mhm.
In setting up a middle way that fell between the two extremes of sensory indulgence and full renunciation, the Buddha left plenty of room for exploration of desire. His teaching on the subject can be divided into two categories: the right-handed path of renunciation and monasticism, in which sensory desires are avoided, and the left-hand path of passion and relationship, in which sensory desires are not avoided but made into objects of meditation.
Mhm. Okay.
Since the spiritual search and sexual search are bound up with one another. In this left-handed path, we find that the opposite of anxiety is not calmness, it's desire.
Okay. Yeah.
Because desire and anxiety are conflicting orientations to the unknown. Both are tilted toward the future. Desire shows a willingness, a need to engage with the unknown, while anxiety suggests a fear of it. Desire takes one out of oneself into the possibility of relationships, and it also takes one deeper into oneself. And that's exactly, was it last year at this time? I think it was last year at this time I started asking myself, what is it I truly desire?
Mhm.
Right. And my life has royally changed since then.
Everybody has to ask themselves that.
But it wasn't a shallow desire. It was what do I best desire? What is my desires for the future of Aloha I Need Now Living Al Sustainable Life Dojos?
Mhm.
Right? How can I impact more people? How can I be more of service? Because right now my one little farm isn't really of service.
Mhm.
So to love to my next 7 generations, that's right. That's the deepening.
Yeah, the desire has to be really big, not just your own personal. Oh, I desire some peace in a
I
little
desire a
cabin.
new truck because I need a new truck. No, heaven will answer that, but how does that affect the next 7 generations, right?
Yeah.
So anxiety turns one back to oneself, but only to the self that's already known. Desire gives one a reason to tolerate it and then to tolerate anxiety, but also willingness to walk through the anxiety to get to the other side.
Mhm.
There was a man named Richard Alpert who left the Department of Psychology at Harvard in the 70s and journeyed to India in search of spiritual wisdom. He approached his Indian guru with one question: "How can I know God?" was his question, and his guru responded with, "Feed everyone." So what kind of yoga is feeding people?
Yeah.
And this is the yoga that we're doing with our Sustainable Life Dojos,
Looking to feed others.
ourselves and others.
Mm-hmm.
So Krishna is the god of binging without purging. From the time of his childhood, he was known as the butter thief, butter being the term for the curdled milk that he so loved. People would hide in the kitchen to watch this small child steal from the butter jar. So great was his pleasure of the taste. His desire was so pure and his enjoyment was so thorough that watching him eat the butter, steal the butter from the butter jar, evoked ecstasy in those watching because he just enjoyed it so much. There was no leftover dissatisfaction, no guilt or shame in him. His desire was not just a reminder of God's blessing, it was a blessing in itself. And at times it seemed like Krishna would eat anything. His mother once pulled him off the ground in horror when she saw him eating the dirt of the village. She pried open his mouth to look inside and found herself staring into a mountain where his uvula should be, a lake in his right tonsil. The entire universe swirled within his mouth. So Krishna gave meaning to the phrase, "We are the world." And he had the desire, the capacity, not the desire, he had the capacity to meet desire head on and satisfy it completely. In feeding himself, he managed to make everyone feel better. In having such a joy of oh my God, this is so amazing.
Mm-hmm.
So what kind of yoga is feeding everyone? We can know the divine Holy Mother in the act of feeding everyone while being fed. Touching our own desire, meeting and gratifying another's desire lets us know her fully. And that's what we're aiming, that's to not just to feed everyone and give ample food, water, and shelter, but also feed everyone with the comforts we like in life.
Mm-hmm.
That are handcrafted, not made in a sweat factory in China. For most of us, the path of renunciation is easier than the path of generosity, since we have a strong tendency to view happiness through the prism of Puritanism. In this way of thinking, spiritual happiness is separated from physical happiness, and the only approaches to sensual pleasure are indulgence, which is anti-spiritual, or you suppress the pleasure. And that's how I was raised. Mm-hmm. Desire teaches us not just by gratification, and anyone that's superbly religious, that's absolutely it. Indulgence is anti-spiritual, so you got to suppress it. Desire teaches us not just by gratification, but by constantly undercutting itself, because the moments of complete satisfaction are so fleeting. Desire's agenda is to alert us to the gap, that liminal space, the journey. And love is trickier than we think, the god Ganesh tells us, because to free desire from the tendency to cling, we have to be willing to stumble over ourselves and love ourselves in the process. Our tendency under the spell of longing is to try to take possession of that which we crave, to try to fix it. We want to preserve that which we desire, to freeze it or trap it in the way that photographic chemicals fix an image which has been developed. But where possession is not possible, love can grow. Where we can't possess that which we desire, we can grow love for and ourselves. So desire can be remarkably complicated in its relentless search of passion and pleasure, always moving onward. because it keeps thrusting us into unknown territory and undercutting our immature wants of stability, security, and certainty. The reality is there's a huge value in being uncomfortable, because balance comes when we learn how to be off balance, not when we hold ourselves aloof. Desire calls us with thoughts like, what am I doing here in this job still? Or there's not enough depth to the way I'm living, or I can't do this job anymore by myself. Like an insistent and irrepressible child, desire pushes us until we accept it for what it is, and it is a wonderful teacher. However, desire can only be for what is lacking. It's stimulated by separation. So the gap between desire and satisfaction is what keeps us longing for more. The central joys of desire are very compelling, and desire does not let us stop there, because we are meant to come closer into a liminal space where we can feel the incompleteness of desire's demands. The liminal space is the journey. That liminal space gives us the kind of tantalizing longing that makes passion passionate. The divine spark of desire depends on otherness. The divine spark of desire depends on otherness. And half of our reason for so much conflict is that we know intimately the art of mimicry. So we are all mimic each other, and it's our sameness, not our otherness, that causes all our conflict.
Wow. Okay.
So as one desire is fulfilled, another stands ready to take its place. So as we appreciate the flavor of separation, we also maintain the possibility of resurgent fulfillment. Desire deepens subjectivity as it leaves us with ourselves and grants freedom to our lovers. The self is the source of as much potential as the love we seek. The flavor of separation, the gap, the liminal space is what keeps relationships vital. It allows for a taste that we can savor, a taste that comes from within and without, a taste that is worth cultivating and that speaks to the possibility of working with desire creatively rather than addictively. And 99% of us work with desire addictively. Desire is the highest wave of the waters of feeling or emotion. Feeling is the agreeable or disagreeable phase of a mental state. And emotion is a complex form of feeling into which is blended the element of the representative ideas of memory or imagination. So desire is the strong urge or pressure of emotion toward an idea or object which promises emotional satisfaction and content, or away from something that is dissatisfying. When the emotional urge becomes sufficiently strong, desire develops a conational activity. That is, there is an activity tending toward will action along the lines of satisfaction and gratification of the desire. Desire always reaches out to the object of positive affection as it withdraws from the object of negative affection. So the power inherent in emotion is indicated by the term designate. The term emotion is derived from the Latin term emotio, meaning a moving out. And it's really significant that the Latin verb moveo supplies our English terms of both emotion and motion. Too many of us has fallen into the habit of undervaluing emotion and of being inclined to apologize for its presence and manifestation. This is simply because the term emotional has been attached to and associated with certain unattractive phases of emotional activity. For example, the words sticky sentimentality, the slushy gushing, and the neurotic hysterical. So we avoid it. And the abnormal, which is undervaluing emotion and suppressing it, has become normal, as in the morbid exchange for the natural healthy state. Emotion includes not only some of the richest and most noble elements of our mental and spiritual natures, it also includes much that is of practical, pragmatic value in our daily work and activity. Emotion includes in its category that which thrills the heart of woman and man and causes them to manifest the fine forces of affection, love, and friendship. Emotion lies much closer to the heart and nearer to the spring of human action than does intellect. Man does not live by intellect alone. Emotion must be present to add spirit and soul to the body of personal power. Emotion is the essence of life and the soul of intellect and will. And if you value intellect over emotion, you must know that intellect is swayed, influenced, and directed by emotion.
Mhm.
Your will has its very roots embedded in emotion. Emotional feeling is the most fundamental aspect of the life of all conscious creatures, and it underlies the phase of intellect in the scale of evolutionary development. So intellect is emotion's servant, not its mistress. The basis of consciousness in every animal is desire. The fundamental fact is translated into the impulse to preserve life and well-being and to propagate. The difference between man and animal is simply a difference in knowledge. The smallest insect wills what it desires as fully as does a man. Desire will is always equal to itself. It is not reason which uses desire, but desire that uses reason to reach its ends. Desire is the very essence of man, from which necessarily flow all those things which tend to preserve him. The infinite must have felt that creation was desirable, else she would have never created anything at all. Emotion then is a great incentive to individual motion and action in human life. It is not a merely internal subjective mental state. It is the internal phase of a mental activity working to express itself in outward and external activity. So we could say that emotion is emotion.
Mhm.
Emotion is an incentive to action, to mental and physical motion. So instead of saying, like Rene Descartes said, I think, therefore I am, we ought to say, I feel, therefore I am.
Mhm.
Emotion rising to desire tends to become transformed into will. Before we reach desire, we find emotion manifesting the stage of affection under the forms of love, like, fondness, attraction, right? So the spirit of affection is represented by the phrase, I like. And then desire evolves from affection and manifests as passion, to long for, the aspiration, right? So the spirit of desire is represented by the phrase, I want, and I'm going to receive it.
Mhm.
Desire is stirred into activity and moves out into expression only in response to another human, animal, or object. And it's moved only by an incentive of an emotional nature. Desire has for its object something that which will bring pleasure or get rid of pain, immediate or remote, for the individual or for someone in whom. And so desire exerts a tremendous influence on all the phases of human action. It's the motive power of will that moves us toward the object of greatest desire. The will goes toward the strongest motive present in conscious or subconscious attention at the time of action. And desire also plays a part in our thought, reasoning, and judgments. It quickens our perception and energizes our thought processes. Men do things and act because of the motive power of their emotional nature, as much as they like to say they're not emotional.
Mhm.
And women too, of course, but particularly in the form of affection and desire. Were this motive power absent, there would be no action or doing things. There would be no reason or cause for action or doing if there was no motive power, emotive power. We act and do solely because we like and want. We act and do solely because we like and want.
Mhm.
Desire is the motive power of action. Take away the motive power, and there cannot and will be will not be any movement. Desire is the animating power, the energizing force, and the motive power in, under, and behind all natural processes, activities, and events. If our world were desireless, there would be no activity in it. Not only would all living things cease to manifest their natural characters and natures, but even the inorganic forms would cease to act and move and perform their natural processes. Desire dwells everywhere. Everything has a power of self-movement, and everything that has a power of self-movement is found to move to or away from certain other things for which it may have a like or a dislike. Desire has been called the flame which produces the heat that generates the stem of will. Yet few persons know how to desire with sufficient intensity and insistence. They content themselves with mere wishing and mild wanting, and don't ever have a clue how to let desire fully roll in.
Mm-hmm. One way or another, one belief or another, one religion or another, there's always a blockage to our desires. There's something that's going to block. And, you know, sometimes economy, I think, also has a important role, or at least from where I stand, where, you know, there's a lot of economic scarcity.
Now, economy has nothing to do with desire. It's a force. Desire is a force that has nothing to do with economy.
What I'm saying is what blocks desire.
What suppresses the. Well, because we're taught desire is the cause of suffering, so we don't desire.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so there's so many things that block desire. I mean, like here in Mexico, people they're so used to not desire things because they're on the program of my economy. I don't have the resources for that. I can't imagine that pleasure because I can only imagine money as a way, and I don't have the money, so I just cannot afford that pleasure. I can't
even afford to dream of that.
I can't even. I'm just a regular guy. I can't dream of saving the world. I'll leave that to the rich, to the powerful people.
Right. Yeah. Well, and that's what I came up against today, in opening, in being a king that establishes a kingdom, an empire. Like there's a couple places I'm looking at that I've actually been very resistant to because I'm not worthy of that. Right? I'm not worthy of that. I'm not rich enough, and I had to ferret that out in myself. I had to stock that out in myself. That belief system that needed to go.
Mm-hmm. And with that said, yeah, you said it right there. What I wanted to say, which is having the right information opens up doors. I mean, once you get this information, and the world now it makes it easy for us. I mean, it really makes it easy. There's so much evil being bombarded into us through the mainstream means, right? That you have to question, and it's not that hard anymore to see how stupid, how ridiculous this is. So that makes you question, and when you question, you open up to other channels of information, other sources of information, of questioning the information. And once you open that door, then you get new information. Then you can imagine a whole different world, a whole different situation, and that's when you need a lot of information. You need good sources of information, and that's what we are giving here. That's what we're doing here. That's part of the labor that has been cultivated here in this channel and all these 144 conversations is a whole lot of information, things that you need to know in order to change your whole imagination. I mean, our imagination is limited. We cannot, if we're limited in our imagination, Einstein said it, that imagination is a lot more powerful than knowledge.
Yeah.
Because it's what can be created. So we do need to be in that realm of believing that we are that putting our desires into created what needs to be created, what can be created, and not what is already created.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, and it's so easy to say, well, yeah, I want a world of freedom, but what does that world look like? How can I desire freedom, right? How can I desire? We don't ever go into that because, well, it's take, for instance, this locally, we have these big chicken houses coming in, right? This commercial chicken operation where they say the nicety of the corporate verbiage says, oh, we're just babysitting mama hens for 10 months. 11,000 hens in one house. We're babysitting them, and they don't tell anything about how many roosters they'll have with those 11,000 hens, or if they're doing artificial insemination. But they're babysitting hens to lay eggs, and then as soon as the eggs get laid, they whisk the eggs off to another facility to be incubated. So the poor chickies never even get to meet their mother. Never. Never get to hear her clucks through the eggs or anything. Never. But so they sell us this, and we met at the water department trying to get our rural water district to not give them a water meter. And so last Thursday I was at the meeting, and the board, of course, voted because they're all about the money to give them a water meter. But yet Indianola is going to lose its public school because it doesn't have enough pressure to in case of fire, to hose the building down, stop the fire. But they have enough pressure to feed an 11,000 chicken house, right? 4 of them.
Man.
Right? So people walk out of there and go, well, the board decided that we have nothing to say. And I was like, bullshit. Bullshit. The board worked for us. Have you forgotten that? Have you forgotten that it's supposed to be serviced by the people and for the people? And I finally said it to enough of them that somebody called forth and said, okay, let's have a meeting out here. Are we going to tolerate our water board? And they had 3 sheriffs there to protect the water board.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you started something.
Yeah. Yeah. But this is apathy, the lack of desire. Oh, well, the board decided, so we just have to listen. Oh, bullshit. Bullshit. The board works for us.
Yeah.
You forgetting we pay them?
That's a constant apathy seen everywhere in each moment.
The lack of desire.
But it's we have to understand also where it comes from, where we're so bombarded and so enslaved and so, I mean, the system is so against us that,
well, but
I mean, I'm not condemning apathy, but
we're taught that desire is to live your life, right? To graduate from high school, go to college, get a good job, marry, have 2.5 kids in the house with the white picket fence around it in the yard, and maybe a dog. And if you're good enough, maybe you can graduate to a couple of cows, and then maybe you can graduate to 50. This is what distresses people around here, is that they didn't see me come up through the ranks, so to speak. I walked in and I purchased 50 acres, unknown to them, right? How dare she do that? She hasn't groveled her way up the ladder like we have. But my desire changed from living that life. When I was like, really, is this all there is? I'm going to work my ass off till I'm 62 and then I retire and serve only myself. Is that really all there is to life?
Yeah.
That was desire that pushed me out of myself.
Wow.
But
there's so much.
Don't listen to that. They're just fully satisfied with this concept of working till the day they die, or working till the retirement comes along, and they can live for themselves only, and they don't even make it to that point because they're so sick from all the medications they take and all the stress.
Yeah. Wow. So there's so much to say about desire and how it's applied, but you've given us a good overview and a good
Yeah, we're
solid
going to
base.
go deeper into it next week.
But so we're going to continue, okay?
Yeah, there's more.
So part 2 of
Yeah,
Desire.
Desire Part 2.
Okay. Wow. So that's what I was thinking. Is like there's so much more to so many more examples that can be shown and explained and that need to be explained and shown. So
Right.
I think that's great. That we get another session of that
Yeah.
next week. And with that, we're done with this live stream.
For tonight, yeah, we are.
Okay, awesome. So waterfalls of blessings for all folks here. Please let us know you're alive and that you exist by commenting and sharing and letting us know anything, or just criticizing if you want. Anything's good. And with that, well, we love you all and we'll see you next week. Goodbye.
Yeah.
See you soon.